I very quickly realised that I would probably have a fantastically strong support network, not just from the way that our friends and family reacted to the news, that nobody was overly negative and everybody was very supportive.
So Laura, we have, we've got pregnant. We have, via reflexology, allegedly, we have
John's help.
He did. I don't know what he was there. Joking, John, if you're listening. And then we've had our 12-week scan. We've had a number of tests. And we've now got confirmation that you are, in fact, potentially having a child who, should you decide to go to term, will have Down syndrome.
Yeah.
And you've been reaching out to numerous people through various networks, from family, friends, and so on, and the Northeast Down Syndrome Network. If I said that right?
Down Syndrome Northeast.
Down Syndrome Northeast. The DSNE. There knew there'd be an acronym somewhere. And we have some significant people that you connect with, such as Eleanor and, I believe, Lindsay.
Yes. So after I'd spoken to Beverly, she put me on to Caroline Turner, who is on the board at Down Syndrome, was on the board at Down Syndrome Northeast at the time. And the conversation went very similarly to Beverly's conversation. Her son was younger than Beverly's son, but at the same time, very kind of, supportive and positive conversation that there's no need to feel so frightened. It does come with its challenges, but at the same time, this is we have a very loving family. All of our friends and family and the wider community are very supportive towards us, and very inclusive, and all of that, all of those words that you need to hear at that point. I think if you're wanting to carry on, they were, it was all very positive. And I said to Caroline, well, I've heard that, there's, that children with Down syndrome can often have problems with the heart. Oh, yes. There's a lady called Eleanor that you may or may not have come across already. Her daughter has Down syndrome and she has a heart condition. I can put you in touch with her. And I said, yes, that would be great. And also, there's a family who just had a little boy. He was born in 2019. So was it 2019 or was it 2020? It's 2020, turns 4 next month. So she said, there's a family local to you with a little boy who was only just born last year. I can put you in touch with them. And that was my friend Lindsay, who has become, both Eleanor and Lindsay and Caroline and Beverly have all become very good friends. And through this, it turned out I knew Eleanor through a friend of a friend as well. So it was that kind of spooky, like you were talking about the web, that I already kind of had, like with the link with Beverly, and I also had a link with Eleanor. I already kind of had my own support network without even realising it was there. But Caroline helped me to bring it together, really. And I didn't speak to Eleanor or Lindsay at that point. I spoke to Beverly, I spoke to Caroline, and they both put me in touch with a lady who used to run a charity in Hexham, Helen Taylor, again, another person to talk to with a child with Down syndrome who was, again, a different age. I think he was in between the other two boys' ages. So it was just giving me that sort of full picture of what these families, how they were living, what challenges they were facing, and just, like I say, helping me to make an informed decision. And I spoke to all three of them at length, with John sat next to me on the sofa, kind of trying to half hear the conversation, but I didn't have them on loudspeaker, so he was getting bits and not others, but also kind of zoning in and out of it because it was a lot of conversation that I was having. And at the end of that, I had a few notes of things that they'd said, you need to go and look at this, you need to go and see this, you need to go and read this. Don't just Google it. They all said, don't just Google it. And they all gave me resources on the internet for me to go and do more reading around and that kind of thing. And that's how I discovered the charity Positive About Down Syndrome, which is a national charity that Caroline now works for as well. She helps to coordinate the conversations with the maternity units around the country, around the language that they use and the positivity and that kind of thing. So I discovered Positive About Down Syndrome, very quickly joined a Facebook group that they ran that was for people with a prenatal diagnosis, for expectant mothers, basically. And they were very again, very supportive and very informative and very chatty. You know, there was volunteers that I could talk to online. And by the end of that bank holiday weekend, I already had like a national network of people that I could call on with experience of having a child with Down syndrome to support me and give me advice and all the rest of it. And I think that a lot of that helped us make the decision, because that helped, because as much as John and I were discussing it, I did take on board what he said about it being, to a certain extent, being my decision. And I needed to feel confident in that decision. So I needed to feel that I'd done that research myself and gone out and listened to what people had to say. And that's what we did.
So, Laura, that's a lot. Been fantastic to learn so far. But in the next episode, we'll learn exactly what decision you made. I mean, it might be quite obvious to some, but we'll talk about...
Oh, I'm not very good at keeping secrets, am I?
Not really. But we'll talk about the diagnosis, and we'll talk about some of those fantastic networks that you've engaged with and the support, and will they, won't they? We'll find out more in the next episode. I'm very excited by this journey. I hope our listeners are equally excited, because this program is about sharing your story in the hope that it will inform and support others who may be going through a similar journey themselves.
That's exactly what I'm looking to do, Craig.
Awesome. This has been Tea and 21 with
Laura Sharpe.
And me, Craig Wilde. Catch you next time.
Bye.
Bye. There you go.
Niltoni Broadcast Network, NBN. Popcorn for your ears.